YouTube? My name is Mario, aka the real Super Mario. Check out the main channel because the main channel is popping, aka the Loot Box Hero, aka YouTube's greatest fat man here, bringing you another video. Alright, so we have black tropes that I would like to see in Escapism. So this is a little bit different than my regular tropes video. This one is more of a positive video and things that I want to see versus things that I don't want to see. If you wanted to catch up on this, you can check out the previous list that I made with tropes that I wanted to see, but let's get on into it. You ever ask yourself, why do people hate black female characters?
Hell no!
Well, let me let you in on a little secret. It's because they're not relatable. Okay? They try to make the characters to break a certain type of like status quo, and they're not trying to make characters that relate to people. And relatable characters, you know, are some of the best characters out there because guess what? You can relate and or connect to them. Which is where our first trope comes into play, girl failures. That's right, girl failures. Because mainly, you know, one thing that people can associate with most people, not just men, but women, anybody, most people on the planet Earth can relate to failure. Alright, because we've all failed at something, okay? Some of us have failed at life. Boy, this got a little too close to home, didn't it? But yeah, you know what I'm saying? Girl failures are essentially these characters that they go against the kind of mold they've created for the female character, where she has to be this super, you know what I'm saying, untouchable girl boss of doom, where she's a little bit more human. A perfect example of this would be Mulan. One of the reasons why Mulan is kind of transcended as this Disney princess is because she is so relatable. She's goofy, she's lovable, she's, you know, she's bubbly. She's like a normal person. She's like a person that you would want to be around, or you would want to follow her story of her becoming a warrior and saving China. You know, that's why people like the Mulan story so much. And that's why when Disney turned her into a CCP Power Ranger, that movie was so garbage. Because it literally took out the soul of that character that people liked and replaced it with propaganda and, you know, the message and all this other kind of stuff. So I think if we bring in girl failures to, you know, black escapism and make these characters a little bit more relatable, it will work. Imagine if the chick from the Marvels, Monica Rambeau, imagine if Monica Rambeau was more unconfident about her powers. If she wasn't unconfident of what she could do with them or how she could use them or if she could control them, you know, she would have been more relatable because people can relate to being unconfident. And I think maybe the Marvels would have did a little bit better. Tell me what you think, alright? Now that I've eased you into it with a nice softball one, now we get to the deep water. Stevens.
Bro. Hey, bro.
Say that again?
Stevens.
That's gotta be racist. There's no way. I'm gonna just keep it real. There's no way that is like of our culture.
What are Stevens, Mario? Well, simple. Stevens are characters based off of Steven from Django, aka Coons. I know what you're saying, Mario. Why don't we put Coons in our escapism? Well, I mean, for one, you kind of have to have villains, and two, we all know how Django became Django, right? We've seen a ton of Django-ish stories before, but we've never really seen how someone becomes a Steven. All right, because people don't just choose to be Stevens. That's not something that just happens. Usually you're thrust into a situation where you feel like this is what you need to do to survive. You know what I'm saying? All right, usually. All right, when you get to that extreme, okay? All right, where you feel like you're going to go that deep into that, you know, into the water of Kundum. You know what I'm saying? You feel like you need to do this to survive, because that's exactly what happened to Steven, more than likely. More than likely, Steven was just like everybody else that was thrown into the plantation system, but, you know, he figured that if he leaned into it and, you know, basically buttered up his masters, that he would survive and get himself a better position. And that's a pretty interesting story to tell. You know what I'm saying? I don't think I would make that person the protagonist. I would definitely have them be against a real hero or protagonist. But seeing that person go from, you know, regular enslaved person to the the absolute villain of the story would be pretty interesting, though. Tell me it wouldn't. The Black Nuclear Family. So this is a trope that I definitely think should come back into Black escapism, mainly because, I mean, it promotes a positive message. All right, you know, we can talk about black villains all day, or at least I can. You know what I'm saying? But we do need to start projecting more positive messages through Black escapism, and there's no more positive message than the Black Nuclear Family. All right, and this is something that they used to, you know, push back in the day. You look at the Cosby Show, you look at, you know, most of the big, you know, golden era of black, you know, television, and you would see this. Now, I'm not saying this because, like, oh, he's doing some conservative messaging, and that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying I think it's a good thing to push a message like this. Not really for any political reason, just for the good of the community in general. Not to mention, it's a different type of story that you can tell. Okay, we haven't told stories like this in a while. All right, you know, unless you count like the Proud Family or something, but the Proud Family is more about, you know, socio-political messages than it is about the family itself, at least at this point. So I think, you know, bringing this back would be pretty good for Black escapism. The evil Wakandan. Oh yeah. So the evil Wakandan, or basically the evil Black Empire. I think this will be pretty cool. All right, I'm gonna be honest with you. You know what I'm saying? I think because we've seen tons of evil empires before. Star Wars has done what, 2 evil empires? They did the Empire, and then they did the First Order, which is, I guess, what, the Empire Plus, I guess. You know what I'm saying? Well, of course, you've seen Lord of the Rings and Sauron. You know, I guess according to leftists, you know, black people are orcs, so maybe that is the Black Empire. You know, but an actual like black evil empire would be pretty interesting because it puts, you know, black civilization into a place where you don't normally see it. You don't normally see black civilization as the one that is doing the conquering. Unless, you know, you're looking at like Shaka Zulu movie or something, like, you know, which, to be honest, we should do a new Shaka Zulu at this point. I'm just saying, it's been a long time. All right, we need to dust off Shaka Zulu and do another Zulu movie. But I believe a black imperial story would be kind of interesting because you could also do some twists to the imperial trope. Like, how would a black empire be different from your average, you know, fascistic empire? Like, would they fall into the same fascistic elements, like, you know, goose stepping, the uniforms, or would it be something different? Because again, it's got a little bit of a black flavor. It's got a little bit of that seasoning in it. Does it come across different? You know, or do you do something more along the lines of a leftist empire, like a tanky commie type of thing, which you could do. It would be a little boring, but you could do that. You know what I'm saying? Tell me what you think in the comments. All right, and the last one on this list of tropes that I would like to see in black escapism, black high fantasy. All right, so this one really isn't a character trope per se. I guess we've kind of drifted away from character tropes. But black high fantasy is something that I would like to see in black escapism. This is one of those ventures that we haven't really gotten into when it comes to black escapism. And I think because the mainstream of like black entertainment or black Hollywood or whatever you want to call it, they don't either don't have faith in high fantasy in the community, or they themselves don't like it. And you have to remember that there was one point in the black community, fantasy was not a big thing. All right, you know what I'm saying? If you was into sandals, swords, and sorcery, like, you was seen as weird. All right, if you play anime, if you watched anime and you was into that kind of stuff, you was weird. All right, they said, why are you watching them weird Chinese cartoons? You know, that was what it was. That was the way it was. And this was like, what, 15, 20 years ago. Okay, all right. When I was in school, you know what I'm saying? When I was in, like, you know, elementary, middle school, you know, people weren't really rocking with anime like that. Like, I think Pokemon really kind of broke, like, put a crack in that whole thing, because everybody kind of hopped on Pokemon. You know what I'm saying? But there was still people in there that would bully you for liking Pokemon, even as kids, you know? So, yeah, it wasn't something that we just rocked with back then. So I think now that we have, like, that generation of creators, or that generation of people are now the big creators, they still don't really rock with high fantasy. But there is a huge market in the black community for high fantasy. Why do you think that, you know, the Rings of Power wanted to put in 50-11 black people, or the Wheel of Time, or any other high fantasy, like, European-based, you know, story, decided to inject several black people into it because they want to get to that black audience? We should make our own black fantasy. All right, when I mean fantasy, I mean high fantasy. I don't mean, like, you know what I'm saying? I mean, like, sorcery, sandals, and swords type of fantasy. I think we could do it. I think an African-based one would be pretty interesting. You know what I'm saying? You could take the elements of high fantasy, elves, dwarves, you know what I'm saying? You can swap them out. You know, make the dwarves pygmies. You know what I'm saying? You can make the, you know, the elves to be like, you know, Hasidic Africans. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean when I mean Hasidic Africans. All right, you understand me, okay? You can do that, you know. You know, and if you really want to get weird with it, you can make orcs like, you know, white people or something. Don't do that. Please don't do that. Don't do that. But you could do something like that. Play around with it, but, you know, throw some seasoning on it. I think it would be pretty good. Tell me what you think. All right, you know, now the positive tropes seem to be a little bit harder to write than the negative ones, because I mean, I guess it's just, maybe it's just easier to write negativity than it is to write positivity. If you have some positive tropes you want to see, throw them in the comments, and I'll definitely look into them and see if I can come up with something cool with them. So tell me what you think in the comments down below. Like, comment, subscribe, and as always, people, have yourself a good one.